You know, right now it's early pre-spawn, and a lot of the fish are sort of, they're still focused on feeding. You know, there's a point in time where that transition, that warming trend sort of happens, and those fish will start to slide up. Solid fish, man. There's always fish that are either going in or going out. And you know, these fish are sort of staged up. It's a traditional staging place, you know, an area where a lot of these fish are going to spawn. They're closer to a pocket. And that's really the deal that I'm targeting right now. The females a lot of times won't slide up really early and spawn. They'll sort of hold off and wait for their perfect conditions where the males slide up there and make the beds. They're still worried about eating, and that's the kind that you want. You know, you want them ones that are really focused on the feeding aspect of it more than the spawning ritual. So, you know, right here we're sitting in a perfect little transition place. You know, we're in a creek arm in a pocket, and you have a real nice bluff bank, and sort of it's not necessarily like an actual main creek arm bluff, but it's a very, you know, transitional bank. You know, now a lot of times, you know, as fishermen, we want to put those fish up there as soon as you have the first 70-degree day. You're like, oh, they're going to go up there and spawn. They're going to be up there, and it takes time for that water temperature to warm up in them to realize, hey, you know, it's time to sort of start sliding up. And if those fish are in, you know, 20, 30, 40 feet, it takes them a little while there. And that's what we're targeting these fish. If you have electronics and you're able to sort of utilize that, you know, you can get out here and find fish that are pre-spawn. And then of course there's fish up there on the bank as well. And that's one thing that's great about the springtime is there's several fish that are in different stages throughout the spawn, whether it's pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn. There's a lot of ways to catch them. And for me, you know, this is one of my favorite ways to catch them. Big one, boys. Come here. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. The mare is one bad little dude. In this scenario, you just don't want to be a one-trick pony. You want to constantly be learning. And there's certain days they're going to bite one bait. They might be the Jigging Rat Mag. There he is, big. A jigging wrap is, you know, a great bait to sort of generate those strikes when maybe they don't want to bite, you know. When them suckers are deep, that Jigging Rat Mag is a bad dude. Unreal. And you know, then of course you want something lifelike, like a, you know, a smaller swim bait's always, you know, a choice of mine, especially when the fish are coming and feeding on smaller bait. You know, that's always, you want to try to sort of match the forage that they're really feeding on. You know, right there, that fish was right on this little lift right here. There's a nice little transition. And one thing that those fish, when they get out there on the edges of the tree channel, they get on bait pretty good. And one thing that actually matches them pretty well is that 3-inch mare. Gizzard shad color, small profile, small bait, and it just flat out gets bit. You know, it's matching the forage type that you're fishing, and that's a gizzard shad color. It might be threadfin that we're targeting, but catch a solid fish like that right there. I think a lot of times there's a misconception a little bit with smaller baits. It's just sometimes it's like, oh, well, you're just throwing a smaller bait, you're not gonna get a big bite, but that's far from the truth. Catch solid fish for sure. Sometimes even if they're feeding on shad or you're feeding on bait fish, there's times that like you'll catch them on a jig better on the bottom, you know. So you always have to have multiple things rigged up, and that's what it's fun to me. Like that's why I enjoy this way of fishing, is because it's always changing. You know, I've caught a lot of really nice fish on a Ned rig on the bottom, you know, like a small, you know, little Ned BLT, and that's sort of the scenario. You know, you transition and you have to sort of adapt to their mood. There he is, good fish right there. When the bite gets tough, pick up that Ned BLT and it just gets bit and flat out catches them. It's so much fun to watch and sort of see how they go from maybe a morning bite and then to afternoon bite, and they might go a little deeper, they might go a little shallower, they might be gone all, you know, it might be just completely in the morning thing where they feed in the morning and it's done, you know. So it's a cool way to target them, man. It's again, if anything, it's my favorite way, just because it's like it's like sight fishing, but and it's not guaranteed. Like, I mean, there's a lot of fish that just do not want. Oh. Nope, you were not about that, were you? So, you know, one thing that's really awesome about forward facing sonar, I mean, you don't have to have, you obviously see a lot of pro anglers, you know, we go out here with 6 graphs a lot of times on our boats, and And, but you can do it with, a 9-inch graph and a 10-inch graph. You'll see them literally, a lot of times they're moving constantly. They might be up there and they might be up there on the bank for, a minute and a half, and all of a sudden they're out there in 50 foot of water. And so you're constantly changing, the technique maybe that you're utilizing to target those fish depending on where they slide to. Once they sort of know and see your boat, they get it pretty smart pretty quickly. And that's something that, for me, it's a game, it's a challenge. You're constantly casting out there on those places. Bass are very good at hiding. And a lot of times they'll just tuck into places and you just can't see them with your forward-facing sonar. So there's a lot of times that actually just fishing, can generate those bites, and then you actually find them by fishing. Beautiful fish. Look at that. Oh, gosh, dude, that's so awesome. That's something that I have learned through the years. It's like technology is great, but there is some times that you're gonna have to just sort of find them by fishing or relocate them by fishing. It's not an end all be all. Look at that thing. Beautiful fish, absolutely just some unbelievable coloring, dark lips. Look at that thing, just choked. The baits that I'm selecting right now are all baits that I can sort of control the depth. I might have heavier heads or lighter heads on each one, but it comes down to the fact of like how I want to present the bait, the realistic view of that. Those fish, sometimes the heavier heads is really a big deal when, especially like I'm throwing like a 1/2 ounce moon eye head right here on this Lemaire. Like that's important to be able to get down there to those fish. So there's also heads I have quarters rigged up with a mare. I have quarters rigged up with a little Ned BLT. I have, you're just constantly trying to change the overall action of your bait a little bit different, and you sort of have to figure that out. But you'll notice that I have multiple different, weight sizes on my baits, from 3/4, 1 ounce, all the way to like obviously the Jigging Rat Mag being the heaviest. And so that's just the whole purpose for that, is really just trying to target these fish that, that are changing constantly. They're constantly moving here, there. You just have to constantly be adjusting the technique that you're casting at them. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to giving those fish what they want. And as pressure gets tougher and these fish get more pressured, you have to constantly be innovating. You have to constantly be changing up with the game. And I don't know what I'm gonna catch them on next. Spotted bass. That's a fun, fat little chunky spot. That's for sure. Gosh dang. Unbelievable. Drop shotting that Ned BLT with a nice little spot.